Well, welcome back. Just wanted to do a review of all the stuff I got back from the Shepherds Conference. Again, the theme was called Shepherding. And if you can see that, Shepherding the Remnant. Shepherding the Remnant. That was the theme for this year's Shepherds Conference. And it was a great conference, really encouraging pastors to press on when the world seems to be squeezing, the culture in the world seems to be squeezing the church and causing a lot of defections, not just from the people, but from its leaders. And so I just wanted to really spend time, not so much about the messages, those are all wonderful. You can listen to all of those online once they come out. But I just wanted to talk more about the books that were given out as part of your conference fee. And these are always one of my favorite parts of the conferences are the books. I kind of grouped them into three or four categories. And let me begin by the first group here. There's a pile of books here that they gave on leadership. And the one they gave out is a classic. It's called Spiritual Leadership. It's by Oswald Sanders. This is a classic book on just overall leadership for men. The principles of leadership. And I've gone through this multiple times in the past, and looks like it's a new updated version, or maybe just republished by Moody. But it's a great book to have for your men in your church in terms of leadership. Um, there's another book here by Bill Newton. I've not heard of this brother. Bill Newton, the title of the book is simply Endure, Finishing Strong. And he takes that passage in Philippians 3 about pressing onward, pressing upward, and pressing towards the prize of the upward call in Christ. And so he just wants men not to fail in the culture that we live in. And it looks like a good read also in the subject of leadership. And then there's another book here by Erwin Lutzer. Erwin Lutzer. The title is No Reason to Hide. No Reason to Hide. Standing for Christ in a Collapsing Culture. I've read Lutzer before. I've read his other works. He is a trusted teacher of the scriptures. And it looks like this is a book in regards to how do you face a culture that is becoming more and more tolerant of sin and intolerant of Christianity and righteousness. It says here, Erwin Lutzer, No Reason to Hide, examines the toxic roots behind the alarming symptoms of a nation in spiritual freefall and why your faith must empower you to engage rather than hide. So rather than being quiet, he shows, or will attempt to show, how to engage the culture vocally. And one is from another book here called David A. Harrell. David A. Harrell. It's called Warrior Preachers, A Spiritual Call to Arms in an Age of Militant Unbelief. And this seems to be a book on preaching. Here, let me read a summary here. It says, whether you are a minister or a layperson who wants to support and encourage your pastor, this book will edify and encourage you. Well, that's actually a blurb from MacArthur. Here he says this. David A. Harrell talks straight to pastors and leaders in order to fortify and encourage them to face the militant culture and apostasy in today's church by articulating biblical principles relating to real life stories, usable strategies, and points of tactical application. So again, another book about men being strong leaders and facing a culture that is rapidly on the decline. So that's one category, is leadership. And then I really appreciate these two books. These are two Christological works. One is by David Mathis. David Mathis is, I believe he works for Desiring God. And he talks here, the subtitle of Rich Wounds is the title, Rich Wounds. The subtitle is The Countless Treasures of the Life, Death, and Triumph of Jesus Christ. So it takes the full Christ, the whole Christ, explaining his perfect life, his death, his propitiatory work on the cross, and his resurrection, his triumphant resurrection over the grave. And just looking at the three parts to this book, it actually looks like four parts. It talks about his life, his death, his triumph in regards to his exaltation, but it also focuses on his Passion Week, the week of his suffering. So it looks to be meditations on the four aspects of the entire life of Christ. And I can't wait to dig into this one, and I'm sure this will help many, especially as you're thinking about preaching for Easter and Good Friday. You might have some helpful material here. The other book is by Desmond Alexander, T. Desmond Alexander. The title is Face to Face with God, A Biblical Theology of Christ as Priest and Mediator. This looks like something that would fall into the BST, Biblical Studies of Theology. And this looks like a promising volume that's to be added. And can't wait to dig into this one as well. And then you have classics, Communion with God with John Owen. This is part of the Puritan paperback series. I have this already, and I have read it once before, not all the way through, but this is a classic book that I will probably need to revisit again. And then there's a couple books here on the Puritans, well, actually on prayer. One by Bill Varner, William Varner, Dr. William Varner. He is a professor at the Master's College or Master's University, and also one of the translators of the LSB. And he wrote a book on just praying, praying through Scripture. And I appreciate that because it helps us to be informed in our prayers by reading Scripture. And so it looks like a devotion of how to pray. When you look at the category, it says praying Scripture for a month, praying Scripture for a week. Those are the two categories. And then there's an appendix of prayers from church history, looking at how did the church pray, and then prayers for the Christian life. So I can't get enough of these types of books because I need to improve my prayer life. I want to learn how to pray better to our great God. And here's another book on prayer. It's called The Fount of Heaven, Prayers of the Early Church, edited by Robert Elmer. And I have a similar book called Piercing Heaven, also prayers. And then I have The Valley of Vision, which is also another book on prayer, by the Puritans. And the reason I love these books on prayer is because it helps me to address our God in a more intimate, robust way than the common prayers where I'm just asking for help. These are prayers of adoration, prayers of thanksgiving, prayers during suffering. And how can I pray in such a way that is drawing me closer to God and also helping me to think of God in biblical terms, of Trinitarian terms, as I pray unto the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. So wonderful, wonderful books here on prayer. A DVD on the Puritans. If you still have a DVD player, great resource to have. This one, this will probably be the first book that I read from this pile, and it is Piper's latest book. Probably not so latest anymore. I believe this was released last year. The title is What is Saving Faith by John Piper, and it was 2022. Yeah, this was last year. What is Saving Faith? Reflections on Receiving Christ as a Treasure. So here's a little confession. I like Piper's writing as much as his preaching, maybe a little bit better than his preaching. I know that's a no-no to say because he's such a good preacher, but I think I like his writing more than his preaching. Not all the time, but just overall. And I tend to grab every Piper book that I can. Sinclair Ferguson, Lessons from the Upper Room. This is probably an exposition of John 13, 14, and 15. 16 and 17, all the way to the high priestly prayer. So I have not read this, but I trust Sinclair as a Bible teacher and teacher. So that's what they gave. And of course, they gave MacArthur books. These are the ones that you're probably going to get in the mail if you're a Grace to You subscriber. Benefits from Life's Trials, an exposition of James 1, 40 Lives in 40 Days. Probably more of an expanded version of MacArthur's 12 Ordinary Men and 12 Extraordinary Women, that series of biographical sketches of biblical characters. And another one on another exposition here entitled An Uncompromising Life. It looks like portions of Daniel and the life of Daniel have been drawn out by MacArthur in this book that looks like just brand new and released. So those are the books, and I can't wait to dig into them and share maybe some of that with some of you.